Hello everyone and welcome to the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. I'm your host Matthew Head, and in this episode I'm talking to Natalie Brooks. She is the founder of Dyslexia In Adults, where she's using this to drive the conversation about dyslexia in adults as well as provide stories and support. She currently has over 60,000 followers on TikTok. This includes The Hive, which is an online membership program with a community that has monthly masterclasses, tips and advice. She recently launched the Dyslexia at Work Playbook, which despite its name is actually a video series where Natalie coaches you through how to improve your life at the workplace. And before she started all this, she used to work for Amazon as an account manager and has previously been a brand manager for various companies, including the Trainline. I will put links to Dyslexia in Adults, The Hive, and the Dyslexia at Work Playbook in the show notes, which will be available at dyslexialifehacks.com/podcast. Welcome to the show, Natalie.
In dangerous territory of making me sound quite accomplished in that little intro. Thank you very much.
Well, you've done a fair bit. I was kind of adding bits and taking bits away to kind of think, what's she done? But yes, you have a fair platform going there.
I've been busy. Yeah, I've been busy.
Yes. So where I thought I'd kick our conversation off today really is that you are currently recording somewhere that isn't your homeland. I think it's Colombia at the minute. You seem to be quite a bit of a digital nomad. What sort of kicked all that off?
Well, to be honest, I had a really rocky time with employment and work and kind of working. And that's what kind of spurred on this whole dyslexia platform that I have and the community that I run and all of that. And when I parted ways with Amazon, I just felt emotionally exhausted from like trying to be this specific version of myself, like basically trying to be not dyslexic, like doing everything I possibly could to be quote unquote normal. And it was exhausting. And so I have this wonderful friend who was like, why don't you just go away for a few days? And I just launched the community as well, and The Hive, to kind of like help people on the journey that I've been on as well. And my friend was like, why don't you go and just go to Lisbon for a few days, which is one of my favorite cities. There's this company where you can work in, you can stay there and you can work there. They've got offices and stuff where you can just kind of like pitch up and work. She was like, go there for a week, get some sun, recharge, come back, like crush the whole like entrepreneurship thing. And what she doesn't understand, what she kind of like failed to misunderstand about me is that I absolutely loved it and I didn't stop. So it's actually a very good story. He actually I just arrived there literally on a one-way flight ticket because I was like, well, what if I get scared and I want to go home? And so I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I thought maybe I'd be there 3 days, 5 days, a week, maybe most. And I made all these amazing friends that were also digital nomads. And one of them was like, hey, why don't you come with me to Costa Rica? And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. I'm obviously not coming with you to Costa Rica. And after a few beers and very minimal persuasion, I booked a flight to Costa Rica. And the rest of the life is kind of history. I've been traveling now for a year and been kind of all over. Morocco, like Montenegro and all over the Balkans, Bosnia, Croatia, Mexico, Portugal. Where else? I'm in Colombia right now. So it's one of those things where I had literally zero intention of doing it. Did not plan this like lifestyle, but completely fell in love with it, and I feel like I have this amazing opportunity of being self-employed and not having to work in a specific time zone or a specific location. My job has just incredible flexibility, which I'm just so incredibly grateful for. And I basically decided that I have to make the most of it while I can. I didn't really know how it was going to go. I genuinely, when I went self-employed for the first time, I was like, okay, well, I'll just do it till Christmas and then I'll like get a big girl job, like, because obviously it will fail. And it didn't. And so so Costa Rica was kind of like, well, I better do it now because I'm going to have to get a job in 3 months' time when I run out of money.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to stop. And then I realized that this is amazing. And so the rest is history. But I'm hoping that that's not going to make me too unlikable, because I do live in quite a lot of fear that when you tell people that you have a job that you love and you travel the world, that it instantly makes you quite unlikable.
I could see envy being a problem here.
It doesn't like instantly like ingratiate yourself with people. But like on a serious note, what I really try and do with my business is inspire people. The kind of the slightly cringe truth that I, sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable in saying is that I used to live in a little bit of a box that I was kind of trapped in with dyslexia. It really crippled me, and it made me yearn for safety and doing things I was very cautious. And everything was about working out how I could ensure that I kind of didn't have any, big dyslexic mishaps or like big problems or things like that. And a lot of the last 3 years of running the account has been realizing that and unlearning those, I call them I'm dyslexic moments.
Yep.
I don't say them. I wouldn't out loud be like, I can't do that, I'm dyslexic. It's just something in my mind, or deep down in my soul, that I just privately go, I can't do that, I'm dyslexic. And so what I feel like on the account, my job now is to kind of like obnoxiously push people's boundaries to be like, come on, guys, like, you can do this. Like, if I can do this, like, you don't even know the amount of dyslexic mishaps I have had. If I can do this, anyone can do this. So I really try and help people realize that I am not special, like, at all. And there's nothing that I do that other people can't do. And that's something I've become like more and more passionate about. I don't know if that's so cringe that I've probably put people off more than the travel stories, but that is the truth of how I feel about it.
Well, what I'm going to do is take you away from all the sunshine and maybe some cringiness back to Blighty and the younger you. So at what point, and probably where were you, because that seems appropriate at this point, did you find out yourself that you were dyslexic?
Yeah, so I was incredibly lucky, and my experience is not the same as most people's. And I am so grateful that my parents picked up really early that something was just not quite clicking. Okay. That there was this articulate, like, curious, capable child that was just failing. And they, luckily, my mom and a teacher put 2 and 2 together and realized it was dyslexia.
So you were like sort of like primary school age at that point?
7, yeah.
7?
My mum and I can't actually remember. We think we've settled on 7, but it could actually be 5 or 6.
Okay. Yeah, I
was
really 6 when I found out.
Yeah, it was really young. So it's one of those pieces of information that I don't really remember finding out. It's something I've always known is the case with me. Yeah. And I think for me, what I often say to people is my diagnosis was my coat of armor. It was like a shield that when people made me feel stupid, because very rarely people actively tell you you're stupid, they make you feel stupid.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Don't get me wrong, I've also had times where people told me I'm stupid, but 9 times out of 10, I actually just feel stupid in a moment, not actually actively told that I'm stupid. That it was kind of like, okay, this is not going well, but I understand why. And I understand that it's not something that I should be ashamed of. I've never been ashamed of being dyslexic. I've always been frustrated by being dyslexic, I think, is the better description. So that's my experience.
Yeah, so what sort of, obviously, if you were sort of picked up and stated sort of as 6-ish, what sort of measures were your school and your parents putting in place then to sort of help you along with it? Was there any particular intervention they did at the time? Because I remember back at that age of primary school, them sending me away to different other schools to go sit in. I can't even remember what the teacher did, but they'd like go around rooms and tell people where to put things and stuff. It was all sorts of things, throwing basketballs back and forth in playgrounds while the other kids are doing other things. So what was your experience of that at a young age where you were kind of walking through it?
Yeah, so the school I was at was a good school and like very supportive, but they didn't have any specific kind of support for dyslexia. So my mum was like, okay, right, well, you're out there. And I think at this point, I was in year 4 and couldn't read or write at this stage, which is kind of not acceptable for for that kind of time frame.
No, unfortunately.
And no, I remember going when I went to the new school, I couldn't really put a sentence together, and that was quite. I remember watching the teacher's face, being like, "What?" So my mum first tried working with that school. They were like, "Sorry, we don't really know what we're doing. So maybe try somewhere else." And then she went around a number of other schools. And interestingly, they all said she's really doing okay. She's not a failing student, so we can't give her support. There was always this concept of I'm good enough, but that I don't deserve as much support as I need.
Yeah.
Anyway, then I ended up going to a private school that did have specific support for dyslexia.
Okay.
And they really did turn around the whole reading and writing thing. I'm by no means a literary genius, but I can string a sentence together now.
You're not writing War and Peace in the background then, right?
Not yet. It's not on the to-do list, but not yet. And they really turned it around. And I think what was really nice about that school as well, in juxtaposition to my later schools, is that they really were so much more than about education, in the kind of classical, what grade are you getting? It was a really all-rounder school. So it kind of very happy clappy, there was a lot of going out into nature and stuff like that. And I think at the time when I was, not really thriving, that was exactly what I needed. So I think what I see now is that the environment of that school was part of what I needed, not just the way of I was taught to learn. It was I felt safe to fail. And I think that's really important.
It certainly is. And I sort of thought it was interesting, your point about they were sort of triggering a memory in me with the whole you're good enough kind of thing. Where it's but nobody wants good, do we? We want optimal.
I want to be the best I can be. And
good enough is not.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating. I remember sort of GCSE time. It was if I ask for extra time for you, Matthew, in this particular, somebody's going to laugh at me because you're clever enough not to need it. But I'm still dyslexic, and I want the optimal result from this exam, not that I can make a C grade.
What I often describe dyslexia as, which is going to go down absolutely horribly on a podcast, is that there's a gap. So there's where you can achieve, and that's at one level, and then there's a level up. And I'm describing this with my hands, which is why it's terrible for a podcast. There's one level up, which is what you're capable of. And that to me is dyslexia. I was able very comfortably to get B's, but this has taken a long time. Like I said, I've been running this thing out for 3 years. I am smart enough to get A stars. But I have to find a way of unlocking my way of doing things that achieve A stars. And that to me is what dyslexia is. I am extremely capable, but sometimes the gap between what my potential is and what I'm able to achieve is sometimes what dyslexia is for me.
Yeah, and that's where the help coaching or technology comes into place to try and bridge the gap, so to speak.
Exactly, yeah.
And sort of building a bridge across it. But you clearly did okay out of education, because I was scouring your profile and realised you had a degree in international relations and politics, I think I've written down here, but I've written it down so badly I can't read it.
You're really not helping this drive of people liking me by adding that I'm a politics nerd. Yes.
I was like, that's a fair, like, I've got a degree in engineering because it was not because it's not word heavy, but it's not a word heavy subject, so it suited the way I'd learned. But this feels like quite ready heavy.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. So I followed my happy clappy, like friendly, fluffy school that was like, failing is part of the journey. Snaps for Natalie for getting third place. To going to what can only be described as a high-pressured, like academic, very like, what do you mean you're not going to go to Oxford school?
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a real, like when I said it was
yeah,
when I described it as a juxtaposition, I wasn't messing around. It was very much, I vividly remember a conversation with a teacher where I said I got an A and they said, oh, are you going to retake? And I was like, are you serious?
What? Wow.
Yeah. And they were like, they like commiserated me for getting an A. And I was like, this is a really weird scenario that I'm in right now.
Yeah. Congratulations. You did super, super well, but that's not good enough.
Exactly. That is exactly the school I went to.
Oh my
but
God.
that was really dyslexic friendly. They had a dyslexic support like building. So it had a whole like separate building where I went to school with, where they taught certain subjects in like what was then classed as more dyslexic friendly way. And so yeah, it was interesting. Their strategy with dyslexia in the school was they took you out of foreign language classes and they gave you extra English classes. So all my English classes in this like special environment of only 6 kids, no other classes, which like now when I understand everything about dyslexia, I'm like, what?
And I bet you're almost cursing not doing any foreign languages. Now you're going around the world.
Oh, you don't even understand the intense frustration. The amount of times I'm like, hablas inglés, which in Spanish is like, do you speak Spanish?
Yes.
No. And I'm like, okay, all right. No, do you know what? Actually, that school was, for the time, we're talking, like 20 years ago now, extremely forward thinking, that they didn't see dyslexia as a reason you couldn't be successful. That was not on part of the conversation. It's like, okay, you're dyslexic. Okay, you need help. Okay, like, how are we going to get you to be successful?
That's great, isn't it? Yeah, we put all this intervention in for you, but it doesn't stop you. Crack on. Yeah,
but actually, what I look back now is that it reinforced so many I can't, I'm dyslexic. That whole mentality I have, I really feel so strongly connected to that senior school, because it was like, yeah, you're going to be successful, but not here, not there, not in this way, not over here. It was like, you can be successful here in this very narrow little conversation of like, so this is like my big, like, firstly, the foreign language thing. I feel robbed of a basic skill. I've literally never done a foreign language class, ever. I don't understand how to learn a language. I don't understand the tenets of language. I feel terrified when I have to like learn a language. And I've had to really unlearn that mentality of I can't, I'm dyslexic. And it's rippled into so many areas of my life. I still haven't learned to drive because my whole thought process was, I can't do this, I'm dyslexic. I can't do this, I'm dyslexic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's just it trickled into so many parts of my life. Like I said, so privately. I never told anyone that was the reason I wasn't doing anything, but I knew it was the reason I wasn't doing anything. So the big memory I have is I went round this school when I was choosing my A-levels. And like I said, it was all about A stars or please leave. And so I went round and I went to the science department and they were like, Natalie, smart kid, definitely really capable. We are so excited to see what you are going to do. Maybe try maths. Like, science is really not for you. Like, we don't think so. Oh. And then you go to the maths department. Oh, Natalie, fantastic kid. Wonderful. You really try. Have you thought about science? Maybe not our department. And then I went round to the departments that I love, which is history and politics. And, Natalie, yes. No, you're really passionate about history and you love politics and you want to be an MP one day. That's fantastic. What about maths? What about the maths department? And it was like each teacher would reinforce that I was capable, but not there. Everything was about, you're really capable, but not with us.
Yeah, and I imagine especially as adults, let alone as young teenager, you hear the but and ignore everything said before it.
Obviously, we're only human, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my mum turning around to my head of house and said, no department has told Natalie that she should be taking these subjects. Do you believe that my daughter is capable? And she was just a powerhouse. My mum was like, I'm not taking this. This is ridiculous. There's some kind of conspiracy that, every department can't actively not want my daughter to take these subjects. Yeah. So I sat down with my parents, and the best thing about my parents, and I just wish I could look into my soul and explain to them how much this means to me. They never cared what I was capable of, what I was achieving. If I got B's, they were thrilled. If I got C's, they were overjoyed. And then if I got A stars, they'd be like, damn, what the hell happened there? So for them, they just said, you know what, Natalie, you love politics and history. You're interested in it. And if you have to sit there and work harder and do longer hours on something, which you're going to have to do whatever subject you do, whether or not it's maths, whether or not it's science, whether or not it's business or whatever, you have to put in extra hours. So why don't you put in extra hours in the subjects you love? And if you get B's and the teachers judge you, sod them. Who cares? So they really just said, do what you love, get the grades that you get, work hard, and that's all we care about. And like I said, dyslexia for me is all about a difference between what I could achieve and what I actually achieve. So I got 3 A's at A-level, and I went on to do politics at university and got a 2-1. Nice. And everyone would think that that's a great grade. I know I'm perfectly capable of so much more.
Getting a first,
yeah.
Did you, because politics would have been a lot of reading at uni, so did you use a lot of read out loud or audio books or any of that kind of tools, or are you a decent reader even if you're not very good at writing?
I'm the classic dyslexic adult that I can read perfectly fine, but it is exhausting for me.
Yes.
I will read something once and I'll have understood every single word, but not understood the kind of tenets of the text. And unless my brain is in gear and I'm highlighting and I'm really focusing, will I actually engage in what I'm doing? I think for me with education and dyslexia, everything was always about just doing it the Natalie way. It wasn't really about tech like read aloud or, being provided documents in advance and things like that. It was always just doing things a little bit in a cheeky fashion. So what I used to do is when I was writing my essays, I would read one academic journal and kind of get I'm really capable at getting the theory of something. I can understand a concept really quickly and easily, and I can like see the theory of everything very quickly, have that whole big picture pattern connection of dyslexia really strongly. And for me, it was like, I'm just here to game the system. Like, I'm here to it was like, I'm here to learn because I'm interested, but in reality, I'm here to get my degree. And so like, how do I get my degree? And so I used to read one academic journal and then take all the quotes that they quoted and use them as my references. So I'd only read one article and have like 30 sources. And I personally thought I was a genius for that move. So I would read like one or two pieces, or like I would hunt for quotes. So I'd maybe like Google quotes, something, find it in an academic journal, put it in my reference. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Like the essay was a 2-1. It was all about finding a way of reading without reading was the way that I used to basically.
It's like, I understand it because I've watched YouTube for an hour.
Exactly. Or I would, you could get those like cliff notes of like concepts, and then they would like quote specific things. Then I would just like take the quote from the cliff note book that I'd read and then put that in. So no, I pretty much did like zero read. I actually read more outside of university, like post leaving, than I ever did at university. I became extremely skilled in drinking at university. That was my main skill set.
It sounds like quite a lot of people did that.
Yeah.
I think that was
it was all about doing the bare minimum. Like for me, university was just all about doing the bare minimum.
Okay, so after doing the bare minimum and having a degree in international relations and politics, as well as a degree in how to drink a lot.
That's correct.
Including the hangovers to go with it, I imagine, at points.
Not at 21, but now I firmly.
Good point, 21. Yeah, I was immune at that point as well. So you then roll into the world of work. And from what I can tell, skimming over your career history, you have mainly worked in sort of branding and marketing. How did you shift into that from wanting to be a politician before you started your degree course?
Yeah, like I said, for me, there's a big theme of I'm dyslexic. The last 10 years are just riddled with doors not opened.
Internal doors rather than people not opening. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't even try and walk through the door. I would make the decision way, way, way earlier than that. That like, this isn't for me. I'm dyslexic. So despite being, what I describe is I was extremely capable at educating myself. I knew how to educate myself in my Natalie way. It wasn't usually through the lectures. It would usually be afterwards. But I knew how to get good grades. I knew how to kind of get through education. And then the big wide world hit me like a bus.
Oh, okay.
So I did a couple of summers at Westminster trying to like figure out the whole like becoming a politician thing, or like, just being in the world of Parliament, or like being a researcher, or whatever it was going to end up being. That's just where my passion was. And actually what I've realized is that it's all to do with my big picture. That's why I love politics, is the whole big picture thing with dyslexia.
Yes.
Because when we're talking about policy, things aren't in silos. It's not that simple. Like what you do in health has implications on what you do in kind of the ability to get your tax revenues. Like if people are healthy, you get more tax, or like if people are, struggling with, the seeing all the interconnections of how one thing leads to another, and like how everything all connects with each other. And one thing you talk about a lot in politics is opportunity cost. So if you spend money on defense, you don't spend money on education. There's only one like amount of money. So what you do has implications everywhere, and like levers have kind of implications and all of that. So that's just it. The big picture thing makes my brain fizz, is how I describe it. That's where my politics love comes from. So, so I went into Westminster and I was kind of like doing the whole researcher thing in Parliament, trying to figure out if this was for me. And I basically realized that people gossip about people in Parliament a lot. It's times 50. Like the way that people gossip about people in like politics is next level. And I read something in the papers about this one cabinet minister who wasn't on top of his briefing notes. He didn't like read all his briefing notes quickly enough. And he was a bit like, and he was kind of like being, talked about as being a bit lazy. And I thought to myself, I've made a very successful education career out of like not reading. And I think a lot of dyslexic people will relate to this. I had this deep-rooted fear that people would find me out as not good enough because of dyslexia.
Yes. Preaching to the choir over here.
Yeah. And so I decided, you know what? For many other reasons as well. It wasn't like, I think, from anyone who's even glanced at a paper over the last 10 years will know that Westminster is a fairly toxic environment and I had a few bad experiences. But I think one of the leading reasons I didn't follow that career path is this sense that people would judge me for being different. And I would be like found out as somehow less than. And I was terrified of that feeling. And so privately, quietly, without telling anyone why, I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. And closed that door. I mean, listen, my life is fantastic right now and I'm very happy. And I don't regret it in a funny way, but I definitely closed a door that I could have walked through because of my mentality of I'm dyslexic. And it's worked out okay for me, and never say never on the whole politics thing, but that's kind of what happened 10 years ago. And then I went traveling around Thailand because I was 21 and that's what you do, living like my best basic life. And I came back, I was absolutely broke as hell.
I imagine you were.
I just picked up the first job I could get, which was data entry, believe it or not, as a dyslexic person. And they had a partnerships team where they kind of worked with suppliers to kind of get better like pricing and things like that. And I was doing the data entry. There's a good story, so I'm gonna tell it in a second related to this job. But I was doing the data entry, doing absolutely terribly, and then decided, like, I was looking at the partnerships team, being like, that's a lot of talking on the phone. I'm very good at talking. I believe that this job could be for me. And that was about as complicated as it went. And then I continued in a job of like account management and sales and things like that across my career, because basically it was talking. And it was kind of what I see myself doing, and what so many other dyslexic people I see doing as well, is they go, okay, so I can't read and write, so what job should I do? And that's exactly what I did. I went, okay, so I can't do these list of things. So what am I going to do? And that's how I fell into sales. But just another example of I'm dyslexic was I didn't go for a grad scheme after university. I didn't apply to any. Didn't try for any because of the psychometric tests. I was terrified of them.
Yes, I hate them.
Well, I didn't even try and do them. Loads of my friends did them and got other people to do them for you. You're just doing them in your bedroom. So, I mean, I again just said to myself, okay, I won't be able to pass those tests. I'm not even going to try. So I'm just going to do something else. And I started out minimum wage. Like I had a good degree and a good education, but I started my career on minimum wage doing data entry because I kind of just didn't think I was good enough to do anything else, which is just really sad.
Yeah.
And the irony is that I chose what could only be described as probably the hardest thing ever to do as a dyslexic person. And my good story in that job is that so I like to tell it as a positive, but probably it's a negative. Is when I was working there, so it was entering in price points into their database. And so you would get like a list of like 300 prices, 50p, 75p, 25p, and you were just all day entering in these numbers. Obviously, that is a dyslexic person's nightmare. The ability to swap around those numbers is you're looking at a page and then you're having to hold it in your head and then type it back out again. Yeah. Not a good idea.
No, especially at 4:00 in the afternoon. Yep.
Exactly. And this is why I was doing it all day, every day. There was no break in this task. And so I was doing that and it wasn't going great. Like there was the odd mistake that was flipping through, and I was slower than the other people who were doing it. But I was kind of, I was doing okay. I was kind of making it through. And then basically someone just shouted over to me, oh, Natalie, we need you to like amend this price. We've just got a new one come in and it's going on sale. So it's going to go live straight away. And it was Friday at 5. And I inputted the price as 50p, but the price was actually £5. So I'd inputted it wrong. And what happened was in this system is that there was no check. Like no one else was checking these numbers. And it went straight through live. And then the margin team would add on the margin. And that was how the system worked. It went straight through live onto the website. And because it was a promotional price to a major route, it was being heavily pushed over the weekend. And because I'd inputted it £4.50 wrong, this was like an amazing deal. Something that would have been, £7 was £3. And people were like, this is what a deal. And that was the sale price. So I can't even remember what it would have been if it would not have been on sale. So it was just like, it sold like great guns. And it was Friday afternoon. So no one was in the office to realize that it was going like wildfire. So I lost that company over £5,000.
In one weekend.
In one foul swoop. I'm a kind of walking contradiction of everything I've said. You would never have known then that I wasn't confident. Like deep down inside, I wasn't confident. I didn't think I was capable, but I've always been able to talk. Like an ability to kind of like have a facade of confidence has always been possible for me. So my boss comes over and it's Monday morning. He brings me into a meeting room and, the conversation is going down the lines of like, you're about to be fired, which is totally fair enough at this point. I think in his defense, I'm impressed he didn't fire me before for the consistent mistakes and the slowness. So something came over my soul as a 21-year-old who just made this huge mess up. And I said, the thing is that I think you need to take a look at like your own responsibility in this scenario. You have 2 people whose full-time job it is inputting data into your spreadsheet with 0 checks, and you think that that's an acceptable system, but it's the 21st century. I've been speaking to the tech team, and actually what you could have done, but you've chosen not to, is you could have an API that your suppliers could input the prices in, and then our job in the head office is just to check those prices. So then the culpability is shared between the supplier and the head office. Instead, you're leaving all of the responsibility to yourself as the business. This makes absolutely no sense. You're also having to pay 2 people full time to do data entry, which is madness in the 21st century. I was like, listen, I'm really sorry for the mistake, but I think maybe you need to actually look at your systems, not the mistake I just made.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a speech.
What a speech, right? I don't know if it was...
That's the political background right there, isn't it?
I don't know if it was delivered that articulately, but that is what I said.
We'll pretend it was.
For the sake of the story. I mean, that is definitely what I said. I made all of those points, maybe potentially more precociously than I just did then. I think, again, this is an exact example of dyslexic strengths. I'd looked at the system and been like, this is mental and this is a solution. So that big picture of like, I was able to see beyond my part of the puzzle and see how there was a solution and what implications that solution had in the fact that it reduced cost of headcount. It reduced the ability of like what that business was responsible for if any mistakes were made, because they literally in the budget had an amount of money that was there just for mistakes from the data entry team, which was mental.
Yeah. You know the system's not right when you've got a budget for it being wrong.
Right? Yeah. So I pitched this new system to my boss, and to this day, I do not know how I managed to get out of that scenario, but he didn't fire me. And he said, you know what, you're right. Like, this is actually something that we need to take responsibility for. Like, yes, you messed up, and yes, it's had real world implications, but I think we need to kind of like look at our part in the process here. And we're going to take you off data entry because, quite frankly, you are useless at it, which was like fine by me. And I moved into the supplier relations team and started working on negotiating with the suppliers, doing the whole talking thing, less of the writing thing. And that's how my career in account management and sales kind of kicked off, with one almighty error.
Was your first negotiation to move the price down from £5 to 50p for a particular item?
Exactly. I didn't actually get it wrong. It's just that your negotiation skills were poor.
Your margins are far too big for this. Yeah.
So that was my first job, and then that was 6 months into it.
Wow, that's a baptism of fire, there is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's walk you through your career a little bit. You'd have got to the point where you'd be working as brand managers, account managers, and you're at Amazon. I know you sort of touched on earlier, you were a little bit fed up with Amazon, but what was the spark that really went, right, I need to set up my own business. I'm going to do Dyslexia in Adults, or whatever you called it in that particular point. What really catalyzed that into becoming a thing and you quitting your job at Amazon?
You know how I said earlier that very few people actively tell you you're stupid. Most people just make you feel stupid.
Yes.
Well, on this occasion, someone actually did tell me I was stupid. It was the job before Amazon. I was working at a startup. And the person said to me, are you lazy or stupid, or maybe both? And for a few years at this point, I think I'm 26 by this point, it's been rattling around in my head that this whole dyslexia thing is like causing a bit of a nuisance. There was the whole confidence, I'm dyslexic thing that was kind of 10 layers deep that I didn't want to deal with, but I kind of knew was also there, because a lot of people were starting to say to me, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I was like, no. And, you know, enough people knew that I wanted to be an MP, and they were asking why I hadn't gone in for it yet. And they were, like, people were starting to like notice the whole, no, I'm scared of everything kind of situation, but that I was not ready to deal with. But what I was very cognizant of at the time is that I was really struggling with like day-to-day, like small attention to detail tasks that like those small dyslexic mishaps that I think every person can relate to. So in this job, I was working in sales, but I was working across euros, pounds, and dollars, and I was regularly quoting prices with a euro sign, but I meant it in dollars, or a dollar sign, and I would create it in euros. So it'd either be like really expensive or like really cheap, and you have to kind of stand by your price and quote. So I was having a few mishaps with that. and I was having to write all these sales emails, and I was kind of getting like, I was writing people's names wrong. Like it was tiny mistakes that were kind of like, in this occasion, my molehill was becoming a mountain of problems. So that was kind of what I was completely aware that I was struggling in the kind of day-to-day tasks of dyslexia. Deep down in my soul, I think I also was aware of the whole confidence, like, struggle thing, but I wasn't really ready to deal with that. And I think also my school experience of being taught how to educate myself, I genuinely understood how dyslexia worked in education. I was like, well, how do I figure out this whole adult dyslexia thing? Like, I just need to figure it out. Like, I know that I can do this. I just need to find the Natalie way. Like, what is the Natalie way? And how do I figure out what that is?
Yeah.
And whenever I researched it, it was kind of coming up crickets, or there would be like one page on a kind of massive website for kids. And then it'd be like, adult dyslexia, some common traits. And I was like, no, I'm living my life. I know the common traits. I need the common solutions to the traits.
Yes.
So yeah, I was kind of like feeling a little frustrated. And I don't think that I could explain to like the people listening right now how I am just truly not a girl that does like stuff on social media. Like at this point, when I started the account, I had probably last posted on my personal Instagram account over a year ago, and like maybe it'd be like one story like every time I went on holiday, just to be like, ha guys, I'm on holiday. I was genuinely at my wit's end. I just didn't know how to help myself, and I didn't know where to turn. And the most crippling part of it all was I felt so alone. I truly thought that it can't be adult dyslexia, because if it was adult dyslexia, then everyone else would be talking about it. So the fact that no one was talking about it started to seep in this little voice that was like, the problem is that you're stupid. The problem is not dyslexia. Like, you know, look at how much time and effort people are putting into kids. If it was that real a problem in adults, then the same thing would be happening.
Yeah.
And what I've realized now, better understanding dyslexia, is that as dyslexic people, we have amazing ideas and amazing ability to create connections and see things differently. But because we see things that are so obvious to us, but so completely not obvious to everyone else, we think that our ideas must somehow be wrong. That there's something you're like, oh, no, someone else would have figured it out. Someone else would have worked it out.
Or I used to think, well, one of the things of thinking you're stupid is that you interact with everybody else like they're smarter than you, which gets you in trouble in all sorts of ways in conversation. You're talking to somebody as if they're smarter than you, so they will know what you talk about. And it's like, well, I've thought of it. Then all the clever people have thought of it and realised the reason it doesn't work. If it's really obvious to me and I'm stupid.
Exactly. So there was this whole, no one else is talking about adult dyslexia. So it must just be a me thing, or like it must not be really a problem for everyone else, or, you know, whatever. I just, for a few years now, had been starting to dismiss it. And then, I mean, thank you so much to that absolute insert like beep here manager who said to me, are you either lazy or stupid, or maybe both? Because he gave me the almighty kick up the arse moment to create change. And I was sobbing on the tube home and went onto Instagram, created an account called Dyslexia In Adults, put up my first post, which was like, this is a community for adult dyslexia. Like, do you feel like this? And pretty much instantly, everyone was just like screaming back at me, oh, yes, I feel like that too. Like, I can't believe you are saying these things. I thought it was just me too. And it pretty quickly. I remember I started it late November 2019, and I remember it was Christmas, and I remember like hitting 1,000 followers that quickly, and I was like, this is wild. I don't know what I'm doing about social media. Like I just do sales. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. I just put out how I really felt, like deep down inside, the stuff that I wasn't even ready to admit to myself I was feeling, I was talking about. And I think it really hit a chord with people. And that was how the account started. That's the kind of that's the story of kind of where it started from.
Yes. So I guess almost the account, you're really authentic yourself. Does it almost end up like being a sort of, one of a better phrase, a bit of an online therapy session for your own self as you post things and people reflect things back at you and you're like, okay, I had that assumption about myself wrong, and that one, and this one, and this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the biggest thing was I was in such a negative place. I really was just like in this doldrum of, I don't know how to help myself, and I don't know where to turn because everything has a failure. Like I would leave one job because of like dyslexic mistakes were starting to catch up with me and I was getting scared that I was going to be fired. Then I moved to another job that I thought, okay, like now I figured it out. Like, okay, this is going to be better. And then the same problems would start happening again. And then I'd be like, okay, I need to leave this job. Okay, I'll try doing sales. I've done account management. Maybe I need to do sales. And then sales wasn't quite working out. And it was this kind of like, I was kind of jumping constantly before the fear that I was going to be pushed. I don't think I was ever in that much danger of being fired, but I felt like I was.
Yeah.
I never got to the stage where it got serious enough that I was worried. I would always jump again. So I was doing a job every 2 years, like moving jobs.
Blind. Before you thought you'd get caught out, kind of thing. That's
exactly.
That's stressful.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the first 6 months I was useless because that's kind of just how it is sometimes with dyslexia. It just takes a little bit longer. So I would often get my probation extended as well because I wasn't picking things up as quickly. And it was just a constant litany of small problems just piling and piling and piling and piling. And I felt like I was drowning. So yes, definitely the account for the first year was just me pouring my soul out of like, I don't know what to do. And like, this is a nightmare. And what I was able to do, again, from the kind of pattern recognition of dyslexia, is I had at my fingertips thousands at this point of dyslexic people. Within about a year, it reached 5,000 followers. And this is me like just posting on the tube on the way home. Like there's no strategy. Like it's just like I'm crying in the toilets, putting a post together. Like it's not, it's not, like I'm not kind of like trying to grow a business at this point. It's like I wrote dairy instead of diary in an email today. That's a funny post. You know, like it was really just exactly that, like a kind of a virtual diary almost. That was kind of blowing up before my eyes. But what was incredible is that I had these thousands of people that was talking to me every day. So because I was talking about something so different and new and that was just really not out there at the time, that it would be a combination of the people who were also struggling saying like, yeah, I'm exactly where you are, or the people being like, no, actually I figured it out, or actually I think my dyslexia is a superpower, or actually I've had access to work and this is what's worked for me. And I was having, 10 conversations a day with people on the whole spectrum of where they were at with dyslexia being like, no, actually I'm a lawyer and I'm crushing it, or like, no, actually I'm a lawyer and I'm about to get fired. And I was able, now I can realize that it was my dyslexia pattern recognition that I was seeing commonalities in the conversation to be like, oh, the people that are thriving, this is what's going on. The people that are failing, this is what's going on. The people who make change from failing to thriving, this is how they do it. And I was able to take that instruction manual that I was kind of putting together at the time and figure it out kind of like as I was going. And I kind of like feel like I built a roadmap for myself to go from failing to thriving. I mean, thriving feels a little bit like, too far in the distance. But I mean, I certainly feel now really capable of understanding what I need when I'm struggling, but more importantly, how my dyslexia is a real opportunity and something that is really exciting. And I hope I've made crystal clear through this story is that I did not feel like that when I started. If someone dared call dyslexia a superpower to me, they would get a 10-minute lecture on why I think they're an obnoxious, insert more for swear words. So that's kind of what happened, is that I basically crowdsourced how to manage adult dyslexia, is how I kind of think about it.
Definitely. You put ideas out in the world and, hey, I did this thing today. And looking through your TikTok, you're still doing that now, just now video, I guess. I know it's one of the things, isn't it? It's one of the problems of working from home even now. It's like you think you have a problem that's only you, and it rattles around in your head. And then you get talking to other people, so whether it's your colleagues, because you go in the office for a day a week, and realise they're equally as frustrated with you with whatever's going on. Mm-hmm. And you're the same, aren't you? You put it out into Instagram, it gets a load of traction, which means, hey, other people like this stuff for a start. Other people agree with me, and you've got, as you say, crowdsourced abilities of thousands of people's opinions of how it is, and you can feel all the resonance through it, as you say, as you use the pattern recognition and join all the dots. And this kind of brings me on to the Hive. So when did the Instagram account or TikTok, wherever you were at that point, roll into, hey, I can do this thing called the Hive? And where did that sort of shift from?
So I've been running the So I've been on Instagram for about 3 years now. It's 3 years, like next month, I think. And I started TikTok in March this year, actually. So it's fairly new. Sidebar, funny story. A guy said to me that I was too old to do TikTok. And any dyslexic person should know that you never tell a dyslexic person they can't do something, because my desire to prove you wrong just goes into haywire. So I was posting like 10 times a day just to like irritate him. And like then it started doing well, and I obviously continued, but it actually started just because some person told me that I couldn't, and no one tells me I can't.
Yeah, never tell a pro autodidact that they can't do something, because they spent their whole life teaching themselves how to do something.
Exactly. I was like, oh, watch me. And I every time I hit a new milestone, I text him being like, hey, just to let you know, this is how many followers I have now. I think he's like, I get it, Natalie, like you're doing well. Like I was wrong. And I was like, no. You don't understand that you're going to hear about this for the rest of time. I'm never going to stop. So how it happened was, not to, I don't say these things to point out my own strengths. I say these things because I think it's really important that we talk about dyslexic strengths and give examples of them in everyday people. I'm really passionate about that. And so definitely. I use these examples to help hopefully encourage other people to be like, oh, actually, I do that too. So again, the kind of pattern recognition, like at this point, I was starting to feel fine about dyslexia. I'd now figured out adult dyslexia. I was like, okay, I got it. Like I've Natalie-ified everything. Like I'm good. That doesn't mean that everything is easy. It means that I know how to get through some things.
Because to be quite a lot of the negative self-perception, I guess, has disappeared by that point, and that maybe is holding you back a lot more than the dyslexia itself.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of, so I'd kind of like figured it out myself. And I was starting to figure out this whole dyslexic strengths thing, like what they were and why they were exciting. And I was less like wanting to punch people in the face when they called it a superpower. I'm still not thrilled about it, but I don't want to punch people in the face anymore, which is where I was at 3 years ago.
Just pinch them instead, right? Yeah.
It's just like a backhand. Like it's I'm like, I actually think I'm in danger of doing it myself, which is worrisome, because I think there's an old version of Natalie in my soul that's like, don't do it, like don't cross to that side of the, like,
don't join the super side.
Don't join the dark side of calling it a superpower. I basically, again, this whole pattern recognition, I was like, oh, people consistently say that they're alone with adults. Like, that's the biggest thing, is they're feeling really alone and they're feeling really overwhelmed and they're feeling like they don't know where to turn with it. And it's one thing that someone said to me recently, which I think is a perfect description, is that dyslexia is such a private struggle. And that private struggle is kind of making it worse. So I thought to myself, okay, so how do you, because Instagram is great, like social media is great at a lot of things, but it's very noisy. And the way that I think about social media when I'm thinking about what I'm putting together is I think about someone on the loo. So someone is on the loo and they're scrolling, and what do they want to see for 15 seconds while they're on the loo? It's not the place that you're going to kind of have your deepest conversations or be like encouraged by a kind of community. It's you're kind of like you're on the tube and you're trying to wake up in the morning, kind of, whatever it is. That's how I think about it. I think it has a lot of potential to get people thinking, but I think it's too busy to create real change. So I was like, okay. So the conversations are flowing in my direct messages, but in the comments, it's kind of quite light. So I think what we need to do is bring the conversations in my kind of like private messages together, because one person over here is having this really enlightening conversation about driving, and then this person over here is telling me that they're really struggling with driving. And it's like, well, I just need to kind of like put these people together. So that's where the concept of a community came in. I was like, well, we need to start building on these conversations, because these conversations are creating change. Like, people were messaging me being like, someone said this in the comments, and I also read what you said, and like just seeing 3 people say the same thing made me feel more comfortable that it's not just me. And once I realized it's not just me, I felt okay with telling my boss. And now I have these accommodations, and I was like, wow, this is really exciting. And exactly like you said, I'd use it as my own personal therapy. And I was like, well, people need that as well. So I wanted to kind of give that to everyone. So that's where the concept of community came in. But then what was layered on top of that is I was like, okay, well, people want help, right? They want like kind of an ability to access resources and advice. And the thing is with dyslexia is it's not ever as simple as, oh, just download this software. It's actually always more than that.
I agree with you there.
Like, the software is like one part of the conversation. So I wanted to also kind of do resources and advice. And so, I just kind of took it outside of Instagram, mostly for that whole conversation piece, but also for resources and stuff. And by this point, I was, fairly substantive on size. And so I had access to like real experts that were actually, I didn't realize existed, 3 years ago when I was struggling, that actually there's a whole community out there of people who are trying to help adult dyslexics. It's just that they have the knowledge and I have the reach. And what's really exciting is putting them together. So I was kind of like, the idea that I have is that So for anyone that's just listened to this whole story, what would be helpful from the beginning is actually the Hive is an online community for dyslexic adults. And what that means is that we give resources, we connect you to a community of like-minded people. We also have guest experts that come in and talk about specific topics. So we have like tomorrow, someone coming in and talking about what does good assistive technology look like. But we also had someone from Dyslexia Scotland a couple of months ago talking about what does negative outlook of dyslexia look like and how do you fix that. And I'm so proud of the guest masterclasses. They're going from like strength to strength. They're just getting better and better. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but actually Matthew is also doing one of our masterclasses in a few months' time. Very excited. He's doing one on 3D thinking and how that's an exciting dyslexic strength, because I think you've heard me talk a lot. For me, the passion of dyslexic strengths is all about the way that people think differently and the connections that we make. But there's also so many exciting things around if you do things with your hands, on your ability to kind of see things in a certain way. And I'm very excited about your masterclass as well.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to do it. It'll be odd that I'm on the other end of the microphone giving out information rather than asking the questions. But we're going to be talking about 3D thinking and how I use my brain as much of a CAD machine as I use the actual physical computer. So it's going to be exciting.
We don't bite, I promise. We're very friendly.
Yeah, good to hear.
So it's on a range of topics, from kind of the practical to the emotional, to the figuring out dyslexic strengths. There's so many different topics we kind of cover. So that's what it's all about. And I kind of like toyed around with it in the pandemic. I just had a bit of time. So I created it with like 10, 15 people. I think it grew to like 50 people while I was just, working at Amazon. And, it wasn't about making money. It was about figuring out, okay, now I've got a platform. Now I can really help people. But what do people need? What's going to work? So kind of trying out different things to figure out what worked. And that's where the membership of the Hive came in. And so I had the opportunity to kind of go full time with it. And like I said, self-belief is not my super strength. So I was like, it was October and it was Dyslexia Awareness Month. And I was like, I'll try till Christmas, and then at Christmas I'll get another job. But it will be a fun ride of like, I'll be able to build it in 3 months, and then I can run it on the side because I would have focused on figuring it out for 3 months, and then I'll have this amazing side project plus my career, and that will be nice. But actually, it ended up working, and people loved it. And it appears that you can't build a business in 3 months. Who knew? So I ended up not going for a job in January. Continued traveling the world. Actually went to Morocco, and now the Hive is just from like strength to strength. It's got an incredible community, but also incredible resources. Our guest speakers are just going from good to phenomenal. And what is just so exciting is not just through the Hive, but also through the social media reach I have now. And like you said, the other products that I have.
Yes.
I actually really feel like I'm genuinely helping people and creating change on the thing that almost broke me. I don't know how I got here, but I am just thrilled that it happened. Every door that didn't open ended up being a fantastic thing. The fact that I didn't get a grad scheme, I didn't become a politician, and I started some little social media account, and then the rest is history, really.
Yes, it is great, isn't it? It's got something. There's something really liberating about turning something you believed is your biggest weakness into something that's not only sort of therapeutic for yourself, but it's helping other people. So hopefully people hear it when they're find it when they're sort of 18, 19, 21, rather than having to sort of work it out in your 30s sort of thing.
Exactly.
There's something really nice about
that. What I kind of feel excited about is, because of my experience of struggling, I really hope that I'm able to talk about dyslexic strengths in a way that people can get on board with. Because all joking aside about the whole dyslexia as a superpower thing, I personally feel it's really alienating. When you're so badly struggling and then someone comes along and they're like, no, dyslexia is a gift. You're like, oh, are you serious? Are you actually serious right now? And it's so far away from where you are that you kind of like, you almost, I used to ridicule it. I'd be like, oh yeah. And it was so far away that I couldn't reach it. I couldn't reach superpower. But what I hope I do, and what I really try and do, is go, right, you're struggling. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
Here's some advice on how to struggle less. But what we have to do is we have to build in strengths as part of the conversation. I know you don't want to. I know you feel like overwhelmed. But the reality is part of the solution is also dyslexic strengths. So just bear with me for a sec and listen to what I have to say on dyslexic strengths. And I will also help you with dyslexic challenges. We need to have the conversation about both. It is not, I can't just help you with your challenges if you don't allow me to have a conversation with you about your strengths. Is what I really try and do, is be like, I get it. I know you're struggling. I understand. Trust me. Like the 5K mistake is one of many. That's the kind of the best story, but there's some other absolute clangers. I just hope that it's personal, like that's something that people can kind of connect with. They can see themselves in my story, is what I hope.
Yeah, and I think it's a way of framing, isn't it? As you say, the strengths, particularly with sort of the educational profile of dyslexia being more of a sawtooth than a kind of flat thing, you have the strength and it's balanced out by something that a shadow of it and all that kind of stuff. So you can't have a conversation about how do you be comfortable with the shadows if you don't feel comfortable with the strengths, because the whole thing doesn't mean itself out in the middle, does it?
Exactly. I describe it as dyslexia is it's like two sides of a coin. I have a terrible attention to detail, but the other side of that coin is I have incredible big picture thinking.
Yes.
They're so, like the strengths and the weaknesses are actually very connected. And your kind of ability to do one is often connected with your lack of ability to do something else. And that's why we need to have a conversation about both.
Yes. Well, this sort of brings me quite nicely to sort of how I like to finish off the podcast. I have 3 rapid fire questions at the end of each podcast. You've sort of touched on them now. It's a bit during the episode even, but we're going to go fire them through. They're rapid fire questions from me, but they don't need short answers from yourself. So let's dive into question number 1. What prejudice have you had about dyslexia that has been proven wrong?
And it doesn't have strengths.
Yes. And if an alien landed and you had to describe dyslexia to them, how would you do it?
That it's a difference in the way that we process information that has both positives and negatives, or challenges and benefits, whichever way you want to phrase it.
I like the way your answer is like you're a university challenge.
the deep-rooted politics thing is not quite
it's very, very so. Okay, the final one, and you're not allowed to say the Hive, Dyslexia in Adults, or the Play. Your answer is, seeing as this is the Dyslexia Life Hack show, what is your favourite dyslexia life hack?
Talking about your dyslexia with other dyslexic people. And genuinely, that doesn't have to be my community. I often say to people, just open up to your family about dyslexia because it runs in families, or talk about it to your friend and be honest with them about how you genuinely feel about it, because doing that changed my life forever. And when you start to have a conversation with people and you really open up about like, hey, listen, this is actually how I feel deep down inside, you would be surprised at what people say back. One thing I often say to people on figuring out their dyslexic strengths is listen to the compliments that people are paying you because they've already figured out your dyslexic strengths. It's just that you're not listening.
Yes. Yeah.
And what my friends have said to me forever, for my entire life, like my best friend, if she was here, she would wax lyrical about this. She would say, Natalie, you give the best advice. Like nothing is better than like a Natalie therapy session. And what they always say, and, you know, they would always say that. And then they say, the thing is you just see things that other people don't. Yeah. They'd always say, you're just so good at connecting how different things. They would literally say this, and I would just completely ignore it, be like, dyslexia has no strengths, la, 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 la. And despite the fact that people would regularly say dyslexia is all about seeing things other people don't, it's about putting things together, having pattern recognition, and, you know, seeing things in a unique way. My friends would literally be like, Nat, can we go for a drink? Because I just need your perspective on this, because I know that you'll see something that I don't. Or my friend used to say to me, like, I would say, oh no, the reason why this is happening is because, like, no, but like, if you think about what she said back here, is that all of it connects to this, and this is why she's behaving like this. And she was like, oh my God, why don't I see things like this? Is what she always say. Why don't I see things like you see things? Yeah. And now what I've realized my biggest dyslexic strength is I see things that other people don't see. I connect things that other people can't connect. And people were screaming it at me. I mean, they were literally saying the exact words to me. And I was like, la, 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 yeah. With my fingers in my ears. So yeah, that would be what I would say is talk to people about dyslexia, or just say to them, hey, like, what do you feel like I'm naturally good at? Or like, what feels like I'm kind of capable of, or something like that. Because I think you just don't realize that people see already your dyslexic strengths. It's just that you don't want to. So that would be kind of, you're so, like, for me, and what I see so often is that dyslexic people are overwhelmed by their challenges, that they have complete, like, they're kind of like dealing with this mountain that's right in front of them. And so therefore they can't get to the strengths because they're so busy dealing with the challenges. And if you have a conversation, you start opening up, then people are going to say, oh, but you're so good at this. Or like, oh, but I know you're not good at that. But like, I'm so proud of you because you're so determined and you work so hard and nothing ever phases you, and all of these things. So that's kind of my advice. And it's not just about the hive. I think it just genuinely creates change.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that one. Okay, before we sign off, where can people find you, and is there anything else you'd like to add?
You can find me at Dyslexia In Adults, both on TikTok and Instagram. So that's kind of where I'm at. If you want to check out the whole figuring out dyslexic strengths thing, or figuring out Dyslexia In Adults, I guess the only thing I want to say, and what I feel like is kind of slowly becoming my life mission, is just reassuring dyslexic people that thing that you think is just you and you don't know what to do with it and you feel alone with, there is potentially 700 million dyslexic people out there in the world.
Yeah.
You are quite literally the opposite of alone. There is thousands upon millions of people who feel like you feel, who think like you think, and are frustrated at the things that you're also frustrated by. So please stop feeling alone, because you really don't have to.
Great advice. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me and listening to my long rambling stories.
That's been great fun. That's been great fun. And I want to thank everybody else for taking the time to listen. And I will hear from you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.